grabbing onto my soul, rising up from the mist, pulling me in. I don't wanna let go, settling in another great show. Talk of the town, right here's where it's at. Show him some love, super chat, chat, chat.
What's up, jerks? Hello. I get to check a lot of that. Thank you to Scott SK. You know who he is. He made that little intro video for us. Thank you so much, Scott. And we're the Young Jerks. My name is Mike Crawford. First time here, please like and subscribe, especially. We've got a big show, big guest. We're going to be talking about Nancy Guthrie. Probably talk some about Karen Reed, especially the civil and maybe even some of the criminal stuff that's been happening. And who knows what else. If you have any questions or comments, hit us up tonight. Drop them in the chat. You know how we go. I want to thank everyone for being here, our mods, and all the viewers tonight, and our guest. We've got a great guest, and she's also got a book. Last time she came on, I know some people bought the book, so if you bought the book and read the book, I want to know what you think about it. If you haven't, you might want to consider it. I know that proceeds go to 9/11 first responders, to help the families, to help the victims of 9/11. The book is called The Bald Face Deception. It's a book of fiction. It's a good book. She's a retired FBI agent, and she also does true crime podcasts. She's on TikTok and all those places. She's very popular. She's also often on Justice Served TV. Her name is Jodene Weber. I call her Jody. She goes by Jody. Welcome back to the Young Jerks, Jody.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's awesome to have you back. It's like I was like so excited when you said yes, like immediately. I was like, let's do this. And especially with what's going on right now with this Nancy Guthrie FBI investigation, Pima County. Definitely want to talk about that. But before we do, let's talk about your book, because I want to make sure that people check out your book and tell us all about it. And
Yes,
it's on
well, thank you very
jodeneweber.com.
much.
Yes.
Yes, well, it's called The Bald Face Deception. It is psychological suspense. It's a whodunit set on a lake in the Finger Lakes of New York. And it is fiction. It's a mystery, a murder mystery. But one of the characters is based on my real life experience as a 9/11 responder and my health, how my health was impacted by my exposure to toxins. And so I do donate to various 9/11 responder causes and victim causes. And I really wrote that character in particular so that I could raise awareness as to what 9/11 responders are going through based on their exposure to the toxins at the various crime scenes, but also to raise public awareness as to your own personal safety. If you're in a hurricane zone, if you're out west in any of the fire zones, all those toxins, anytime you have a fire or buildings destroyed, you are at risk. And so I'm hoping through my murder mystery set on a lake, people will become more aware and be more careful and vigilant about monitoring their health.
I love that. I have to say, I have several friends who are firefighters, and that's always a big issue. One of the college friends, a guy I loved, he died as a firefighter in a fire, not from the, not from
Mhm.
inhaling stuff, but, during the firefight. So I always think about firefighters in that as well. What kind of toxins were at 9/11? Because I'm not sure a lot of people realize what happened there.
So I served for 16 days at the Pentagon. And so in addition to the massive amounts of jet fuel from the plane, we also had all the toxins from the building, from the Pentagon. We had asbestos, we had different leads and different types of insulation, fiberglass. All of that was inhaled by all of the responders there, and not just by law enforcement. There's a lot of non-law enforcement that responds to crime scenes. We have a lot of construction crews that come in, a lot of food vendors and food service personnel. We had different chaplains, different members of the media that were nearby. So it does impact many people. There's even people who live within the crime scene zones, both in Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania, in New York. And so they should be careful of their health as well and continue to monitor it for any sort of cancers, respiratory issues, different sorts of autoimmune diseases. That's another thing that many responders have come down with. Parkinson's, MS, things of that nature.
Wow. I didn't even think about that. The construction workers too, and all the other non even first responders. That's just, of course. How can people protect themselves if they're in those types of situations? Is there anything that they should be doing? Does a mask help at all or not? What do you think? Like even a cloth mask or even one of those surgical, or is it just not?
I think the number one thing you should do is get out of there. That air is toxic until it has time to dissipate, until the soil can be tested, until the water can be tested. It's dangerous. And, you know, even us with Tyvek suits and masks on, the problem is we would work these 12-hour shifts, and then we would have our lunch breaks, and we'd go in a tent and take off our mask. Well, all those toxins were still in the air. We'd park our cars when we'd arrive for a shift, and then we'd leave in those same cars. Well, as soon as we turned on the car, the air vents would blow at us, and all those toxins would blow right on us. We didn't know at the time that we would go back to our hotels, and we were so tired, we'd take showers after working 12 hours and picking up all that debris and sorting through it. And we were showering in hot water because we were tired, we were sore. Well, that was one of the worst things we could have done. We should have been showering in cold water so that our skin wouldn't absorb all those toxins. So there's a lot of things to learn, but certainly I worry about the people out in California with all the fires that they had a little bit over a year ago out in the LA area. I worry about people in hurricane zones. Just really, if you are in an area that's either a crime scene or part of a natural disaster and there are toxins in the air, protect yourself, get a mask, get any sort of protection you can for your skin, wear long sleeves, take cold showers, and continue to monitor your health with your healthcare provider.
It's good advice. I would have never thought about the cold shower thing. That makes total sense too. It just it's practical. What kind of you said that you suffered from this. What kind of symptoms or issues have you had, if you don't mind? If you don't have to say it, if you don't feel like it, it's up
No,
to you.
that's fine. No, in fact, it ties into my book. In 2016, my doctors discovered that a vertebrae in my back had completely disintegrated at the same time as my left hip joint. And they couldn't explain why this happened. I was otherwise a healthy adult. I was very active. I had been running half marathons, but there wasn't anything related to my running that would be attributable to my injuries and why I would need spinal fusion and a complete hip replacement at the age of 46. And so the doctors were highly concerned because that is very, very young to have a total hip replacement. Then the next year, they discovered a tumor in my skull. I had to have that removed. I went through extensive surgery for that, extensive reconstruction. I risked disfigurement. They were worried that had the tumor been cancerous, it would have spread to the brain, and then it would have been a fatal condition. But fortunately, we caught the tumor in time, and it was benign, and we got it out, and I was able to have reconstructive surgery and came out of that. And then a year and a half later, my other hip disintegrated. So I had quite significant surgeries all within a 4-year period. And during my initial 2 surgeries, which were about 60 days apart, my hair started falling out. And I didn't know if that was due to stress or if that was another side effect of the toxin exposure. And so I started researching people who have been exposed to toxins, whether it's in mines or at a crime scene. And there has been some sort of correlation. And so I'm studied by the World Trade Center Health Program as part of their monitoring of the 9/11 responders to see, do exposure to toxins contribute to hair loss? Fortunately, I didn't suffer full-on alopecia. I had what's technically called hair loss or hair shedding, I'm sorry, but one of my characters in my book experiences hair loss. And I really found, with going through what I went through at that time and so much uncertainty, that losing my hair, or the possibility of losing my hair, that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I realized that I was as worried about losing my hair as I was about my tumor being cancerous, and about not being able to walk again and not being able to run again, and will I be able to work again? And the only people that could really understand what I was going through were my friends with breast cancer and various kinds of cancer who had also lost their hair. And I realized in talking to them, we really don't talk about what it's like when you get sick and your body's no longer the same, and you mourn the body you used to have. You're adjusting to your new body, but then you're still fearful about the future because you don't know if the other shoe's going to drop. And so you kind of see in my book, one of the characters kind of struggling with that. She's having a really hard time just living in the now, grieving the way she used to be, fearful of the future, and just trying to accept, okay, what's my new normal, and how do I make peace with this? And so I think it's a conversation that especially a lot of women can relate to. We don't talk about how much our hair is part of our identities, and quite frankly, how we're not really given any sort of mourning period. We have our surgeries, we go through our physical therapy, and then we're right back on the hamster wheel. We're back in the carpool lane, we're back packing lunches, we're back taking kids to different activities, we're back to work, we're back to doing all the household things, and we really don't give ourselves time to really process and grieve what we've gone through.
Sometimes the tools too. I think you mentioned one of them. It's funny. Some people in the chat are frustrated because they want us to get to the big Nancy Guthrie, which we're going to get to. But I'm interested in this too. This is fascinating for me. I've had cancer as well. It was very mild, thank God. I was young, but still, there's been issues and side effects from it. Nothing like what you went through. This is just, how did you get back? Because when I look at you on TikTok, I would never guess that you've been through all this. You look so like healthy, and
Oh, thank you.
how are you feeling now? Like,
Oh, I feel good now. I feel good now. I don't run anymore. I do Pilates. I go to spinning classes. I'll walk, I'll hike, but I really miss running. That was really, really hard for me because I love to run. But, you figure it out and you go on. I'm very fortunate. And that was part of my struggle too, is that I had a lot of survivor's guilt, because who was I to complain about what I was going through when my colleagues, some of them were dying. And so that was another survivor's guilt issue that I was dealing with. So that's, something to think about. But I'm doing well now. Thank you. And I'm glad you're doing well too.
I'm glad you wrote the book, because it sounds like it's almost like therapeutic too, to tell the story and raise funds.
It was very cathartic, and certainly people are liking the mystery part of it too. It's not all heavy, but it's just, you want to have well-rounded characters. You want to have characters that have some dimension to them and deal with real-world problems. And certainly, I think, talking about illness and how you grieve the way you were and what you may go through again and the future problems, it's a balance. And so finding a healthy way to deal with those emotions and those thoughts, for me, was writing a book.
It's awesome. It's a good book too. It sells a lot of copies. I've seen it on Amazon and those places.
Yes, it's on
reviews.
submission right now for film and TV development at some
Wow.
pretty big places. So I'm really hopeful that someday you'll see it on the screen.
Are you going Hollywood on us? Are you going to be like the Hollywood
I do
movie
have
chica?
a team. I have a fantastic team that represents me at Gersh. They are phenomenal. They not only represent me for my podcast, but also for my books and film and TV. So I'm very, very happy working with these amazing agents at Gersh.
The title of the book, someone just asked, is The Bald Face Deception.
Yes.
Everyone covers up something. It's on the title, but you can get it at jodeneweber.com. We have it pinned in the chat. So if you go to her website that's pinned in the YouTube chat, you can find the book and you can buy it. Some people have read it. They're already commenting on it, how much they liked it in the chat. So yes, I would definitely check that out. We've had a lot of questions, yes, on the Guthrie. Everyone wants to get to where is Nancy Guthrie? This is like a whodunit now and a mystery, and it's gone on and on and on. What do you want to, because there's the investigation missteps, I think, but it could be wrapping up this new news. What do you want to start on this? What do you want to bring up?
Well, let's start with the latest, and that's the big development that came out today. We know that a few days ago, the FBI was out searching in neighborhoods and areas near Nancy Guthrie's home. And approximately 2 miles from her residence, a black glove was found. Now, in total, 16 gloves were found out and about by searchers. Many of those were disposed of by law enforcement searchers, which is terrible. That's litter, that's pollution, that's terrible. But the glove that they are focusing on, they sent to a laboratory in Florida for testing, and they were able to develop a DNA profile. That glove, according to the FBI, appears consistent with the gloves worn by the subject caught on video outside of Nancy Guthrie's front door. So that is very significant.
They think they found that glove that's on the screen right now.
So, and you can see there, many of us in law enforcement believe that subject double gloved. And by that, I mean wore multiple gloves at the same time. And so is it possible that the subject, upon fleeing this residence, disposed of a glove out of a window and just tossed it in a ditch? And that is what was found. Given the fact that this glove that was found approximately 2 miles from her residence has a DNA profile, it was tested at this lab in Florida, like I said. It has now gone to the FBI, and the FBI is doing their checks and balances on it. And assuming everything checks out, they are then going to see if it has enough DNA markers, it will be entered into CODIS, which is the Combined DNA Index System. And what that allows law enforcement to do, they can compare it against other DNA profiles in that system. And specifically, does this profile match somebody with a criminal history, or does it match DNA found at another crime scene that we didn't know is related? Could it be the perpetrator that was at Nancy Guthrie's residence has also committed other crimes? That's something they're going to look for. If they are not able to identify whose DNA this is in this glove, then I anticipate they will do genetic genealogy and try to reverse engineer and build a family tree in order to identify who this DNA belongs to. So that's really the big development of the day. Now, we heard a few days ago, there's been a lot of reporting about conflict between the sheriff's department and the FBI, and are they working together collaboratively? Are they on the same page? Are there egos and a turf war going on? Some of the reports we heard by various sources was that the sheriff's department was withholding crucial evidence from the FBI. And then reports started coming out that they had sent evidence to this Florida lab as opposed to the lab at Quantico, which of course the FBI runs. So now it appears, yes, they did send evidence to the Florida lab, but now the FBI is getting access to that for their checks and balances and quality control issues, and then they can eventually compare that to what's in CODIS. Now, I will mention the sheriff has made comments in the past about DNA being found at Nancy Guthrie's residence inside. He said, yes, we do have DNA. It's not hers. It doesn't match those close to her, be it family or staff. And so that's considered foreign DNA. So that could potentially be from a perpetrator. It will be very interesting to see, do they compare that DNA to this DNA profile found on this glove?
So this could be the big break. This could be it.
This could be really, really huge. And so I'm very optimistic about it. There has also been reporting in the last 72 hours or so, there were reports that came out that the perpetrator had left a glove at Nancy Guthrie's home. And then the sheriff came out the next day and gave a couple independent interviews to various news outlets and said, no, that's not true. That's not true. Well, there still appears to be a disconnect in the messaging and with the press briefings between the FBI and the sheriff. They need to get on the same page, and they need to have a press conference so that everybody knows what is true and what isn't true, and that everybody has confidence that the FBI and the sheriff's department have the same information. We need to know, was there a glove found there or not? Is there DNA found in that house? According to what the sheriff said, there is. Does the FBI agree with that? All right. Are you comparing it to the glove and the DNA found in this glove that was found 2 miles from the home? Where are we? Do you find a match in CODIS? Do you plan to search the area where you found this glove again? When do you plan to start genetic genealogy? Have you already started genetic genealogy? Those are the kinds of things that I think the press and the public deserve to know at this point, because there has been so much contradictory information and conflicting information and kind of a whiteout or a blackout, if whatever you want to call it, regarding transparency. We've had these SWAT operations, not a lot of information given out on those. So I think for the public, I really do think it would help the public feel safer, knowing that the two sides are working collaboratively, that they are sharing information. And I do think the public deserves some sort of message or some sort of announcement as to what they should be doing. How should they be protecting themselves? Nancy Guthrie hasn't been found. We're going into our third week. What sort of vigilance should they have? I mean, they've been told, look at your camera systems. If you see anything, upload it to our link. But what should they be doing to protect themselves?
Yeah, totally. The thing that I've been criticizing them the most for is the lack of the press conference. Like you said, it's 10 days since the last press conference, and all this stuff has happened. There's a ton of conspiracy theories now. People are camped out in the neighborhoods. I feel like there would be less hustle and bustle around the crime scenes if they just did press conferences and gave the media something to report on every day. And they're not doing that. There's nothing, and they're not correcting crazy errors and mistakes and like I said, even conspiracy theories that are coming out. And I think it would be much better if they spoke. I just don't get it. Why aren't they doing a press conference after 10 days? Like the sheriff said the FBI didn't want him to do them. And then we found out he did some interviews. He did a few interviews with local press, local TV press in Arizona, but they're not doing the press conference. Why do you think that is? Is there any rationale for it?
Yes, I think the FBI, they want to control the messaging. They want to control what is said and what isn't said. And given how problematic this sheriff has been from the jump, I can't say I blame them. He spoke very figuratively, very colloquially in the initial days of this investigation. And he said some things that he had to walk back, specifically about she was taken from her bed. And he said, well, I meant that figuratively. I didn't really mean she was taken from her bed. Well, those kinds of things, that really, really negates trust in law enforcement. And that's not something the FBI wants. They want to have both sides in agreement. And apparently, if you're not coming forward with a press conference, it's because you're not in agreement on what to say and what not to say. And I think, or why things were done or why things weren't done or what's being done and who's telling each other what. We saw with the sheriff, he had no idea the Guthrie family was going to be putting out that first video. He said, oh, well, my wife told me, she saw it on social media. You're the sheriff. You need to know what's going on all aspects of this investigation. You can't just leave the Bitcoin ransom demand part to the FBI and wash your hands of that part of the investigation. You have to know what's going on in totality.
So much that happened, like you said, that the two different raids of different people, you know, everyone thought this was it, and it wasn't. They let these people go after they detained them for questioning. Um, it's just wild that they haven't really confirmed or just put down things that aren't true. I just can't believe it actually at this point.
And I think that's a mistake, Mike, and I'll tell you why. Because the general public doesn't understand that the FBI, many times in the course of many investigations, there are times you have to prove a negative before you can prove a positive. And what I mean by that is you have to follow up on all leads. And sometimes you may not find your perpetrator, but you can prove who did not do the crime. And you can eliminate that person and you can cover that lead, move on, and cross it off your list. And that has value too. And sometimes the public loses sight of that. The FBI and the detectives from the sheriff's department, they have to cover everything. And so if they're able to do these various search warrants and ascertain, okay, is this person involved or not, and ascertain they're not, well, then there is some value to that. And I think that message has been lost on the public.
And we were talking about this glove that they found, and you mentioned this kind of a conflicting statement on where it was found. It
Mhm.
looks like the same. Apparently, it looks like the same glove that we saw in the video, and that's why they're talking about this glove that they have DNA on. If it's not from the house, let's say they found it a mile away, like you said, and it
Mhm.
was like on the way out, the guy just threw it through the glove. Is that going to be harder to get like a warrant or subpoena based off of that DNA because it's not at the house? Or
No, so they found that. And I think it'll be very interesting to compare that DNA profile off that glove to any DNA they have from the house, whether it's from a glove at the house
it's
or whether
true.
it's from DNA, touch DNA, or any sort of other DNA at the house. I think they also will look at the composition of that glove, the manufacturer of the glove that they found, try to verify, okay, what lot production of this brand of glove is it? Where was it distributed to? Where was it sold? Who utilizes these gloves? That sort of thing. And there could be lead generation there as well. But I do think having this profile, given the fact that that glove visually appears so consistent in length and style and composition to the gloves worn by the subject in the video on Nancy Guthrie's porch, I do think law enforcement is optimistic about this being a very crucial lead.
Yes, we had a few questions about I can't even say it, genealogy. That's a tough word to
Mhm.
say. Genetic genealogy. This question: if they have to jump to genetic genealogy, then the FBI is just desperate. That stuff is illegal. Is it illegal for them to look into those databases? Some people were asking too, is it hard for them to get into those? Like, do those databases not let the law enforcement get access to them?
There's really limited public databases that allow law enforcement to utilize them. GEDmatch is the big one that allows law enforcement to compare a profile to the data in their databases. However, there are also caveats where contributors to the database have to allow that sort of comparison to take place. But assuming that all of the check marks have been checked on the boxes on the application by those having their DNA contributed to the site, assuming there's no problems that way, then law enforcement can look in that database and compare, and then reverse engineer and begin to build a family tree. Now, genetic genealogy, it is so helpful to law enforcement. We've seen so many arrests and so many cold cases solved utilizing it. However, there are people who say it's an infringement on civil liberties, on privacy, and I do think eventually we will see it challenged all the way up to the United States Supreme Court.
People probably wouldn't want to use some of those services if they know that it can be tracked by the government, right? I mean, that
Well,
would,
it depends. If you're not a criminal and you don't have anything to
right.
hide, all right, it's not my problem if my third or fourth or fifth cousin decides to commit a crime. If my DNA helps you find that person and that person's breaking the law, a lot of people don't have a problem with that. Other people do. Other people say, well, why should my distant cousins or my distant ancestors or relatives' DNA be used against me? So that's kind of the argument. But I do think as of right now, that is a technique that law enforcement is using, and I would expect to see it utilized if necessary to identify a perpetrator in this case.
Question about this. She said, I wonder how quickly that genetic genealogy can be mapped out. Is it something that would happen quickly, or is it something that takes months to do, you think?
The FBI is very good at it. And I think, they've got their methods, but it can take quite a while in other cases. It really just depends if they can find a match in the databases they're allowed to use.
Let's hope. I hope it's speedy because Nancy could be alive. I mean, every day that goes by, it's, I think, less likely, but that's why it needs to be speedy, right? I mean, it's,
Well, yes. I mean, time is of the essence here. The situation is dire given her age, given her medical conditions, given the fact that we don't know the extent of her injuries after she was kidnapped. We don't know if she's been given any sort of medication that she needs. We don't know how much stress she's under. Obviously, this is very upsetting for her family. You can't imagine what she went through. I mean, just think about how terrifying those images were that we saw the other day when they first came out of that masked individual on her front stoop messing with that camera. I mean, people were they just couldn't believe how terrifying that was. Now imagine if you're 84 years old and you wake up to that.
the middle of the night. I
Mhm.
know, and it's like, that's when we all knew this lady just didn't have Alzheimer's or something and walk off into the desert, you know?
Right.
That's when everybody knew this is real. Somebody kidnapped this woman, and just shocking to see that kind of
Well,
that
and
video.
I really want to stress that this is not isolated to Tucson, Arizona. I mean, one of the things that's coming out as a result of this is that people are looking at their Ring footage and their Nest cameras and their Blink cameras, and they're seeing, wow, I had a guy outside my house, and they're starting to
Right.
post it to the Ring apps and the various apps. And you see the amount of people that are out prowling around, walking around homes, trying to enter homes, trying to go into cars parked on driveways or at the curb. These are kinds of things that go on all across the country. So you need to stay vigilant. You really, 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 if you can afford to, have some sort of camera system and have a monthly subscription. I think that's another lesson we can take away from this case. Had she had a monthly subscription, the video images would have been sent back to the company and would have been much more easily accessible, and possibly accessible from her cell phone quicker as well. And so that would have really helped law enforcement have these images sooner.
Absolutely. And one of the things that came out is they're tracing the pacemaker. They're trying to do that with a helicopter. How helpful is that
Yes.
in a city like Tucson, though? Because do they have like a specific signature for that one pacemaker, or are they just looking for any pacemaker?
So I think what it is. It's the blue fly technology, which essentially it's this device, and they can attach it to a drone or to the helicopter, and the helicopter and the drone have to fly low. They have to be within so many feet of it. But what it looks for is Bluetooth or Wi-Fi signals. And then it can pick up not only pacemakers, it can pick up glucose register machines if you have one of those, any sort of Fitbit, Apple Watch, AirTag, any of the smart technologies, but it's looking for those frequencies. And that's what they're looking for, to see if they can get some sort of frequency from the pacemaker. Now, even if she is deceased, the pacemaker will still work. So if they can locate that signal, they may be able to locate where she's at.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that they still would continue after the.
Mm-hmm.
That could be that definitely could be helpful. God forbid, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how much technology can help us, but yet at the same time, it makes criminal investigations that much more laborious, because you've got all these people now sending in all these videos, and it's a lot to sort through. But certainly camera systems, cell phone signals, Apple Watches, that's another thing that I'm very curious about, that law enforcement really hasn't gone into depth about. We've heard the fact that her pacemaker disconnected from the Apple network, from her phone and from her Apple Watch. But I'm very curious, did she go to bed with that Apple Watch on? And was she made to take that watch off? Or did she have it off of her before she went to bed? Because if she had it on at the time the intruder breached the property, can law enforcement look at her heart rate activity? If she had that watch on, did it register any sort of hard fall? What kind of data does that watch tell us? I'd be very curious about that.
Got a couple questions, follow-ups on these. We're getting a lot of follow-ups about this pacemaker and that search. Um, both of these comments are very similar. Christine says that should have been done the very first move when she was kidnapped.
I
And
think
then,
it was. I think it was. The
okay.
helicopters were flying out the first 24 to 48 hours. And then about the third or fourth day, the reporters were like, why are the helicopters around her house flying so low? So I do think it has been going on. They just haven't really announced it. But certainly that is something that has been talked about, and certainly something at least the FBI would be looking into, as to what sort of data could either they get through this type of technology related to the pacemaker, what sort of pacemaker data can they get through her Apple devices, and even through potentially her cardiologist. What can they monitor? Are they able to log into the system in any way? All those things should be done, and to the point of this commenter, from the beginning.
Oh, it sounds like it's probably been happening the whole time. You had this other comment earlier about the gloves, how there were many gloves found. Gloves were being discarded by law enforcement and searchers, apparently.
It's
One of our
horrible.
mods had a question about this. Yeah, how is that happening, and why? Like, what would your comment on that be?
Well, if you ever look at law enforcement when they're doing these ground searches, most of us are wearing cargo pants, which have multiple pockets. My training was you never leave garbage anywhere. Even if you're at a search warrant at a house and you need to blow your nose, you take that tissue with you. You do not leave water bottles, garbage anywhere. And certainly you don't litter and pollute and, toss your gloves out. I mean, not only does that complicate the investigation, because now you have to sort through and say, all right, is this a latex glove worn by a searcher, or is this potential evidence? So it's problematic, and it should not happen. And it did happen. And, the FBI and the Sheriff's Department are going to have to address that there's absolutely no excuse for that.
Just basically, even beyond the crime scene stuff, which totally makes sense. You take everything with you.
Mhm.
Why litter? I'm not a litter bug. I hate litter. I hate
Well, and
people
it's
who litter.
all
It's
the
just a real
wildlife
pet
out
peeve.
there, the
Yeah,
birds and,
take it with you.
animals. Right. Yeah, yuck. Gross.
I never get that. Why people leave all their trash everywhere. It's so annoying. It really is.
Mhm.
You see people throwing stuff out the window. It's like, oh.
I know.
Um,
Terrible.
it's a good question. This is from Sarah. She actually had the last question too, but she always has good questions. She's our top moderator here. She says, "What are Jody's thoughts on the sheriff taking a roundabout way to say the family members haven't been fully cleared yet?" He said that in a recent interview we just played. Standard response or something to read into?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think initially there was reporting from one journalist who said, I have this super high level law enforcement source, and that source is telling me that a member of the family was maybe their prime suspect. And this was about day 3 or 4 of the investigation. And no other major media outlets reported that. And it was single source reporting. So a lot of people were like, ooh, that's really risky to report something like this with only a single source. And there were many reporters, including Brian Entent with News Nation, who came out on his own YouTube program and said, look, I'm transparent. I'm not hearing this at all. I don't have this information. And so a lot of people were running with that on social media, that potentially it may be someone in the family. And so then when they did have that law enforcement press conference, the sheriff got up and said, look, we haven't ruled anybody out yet. Everybody's still a suspect. And then he even went so far to say, look, if you falsely accuse somebody, you could really harm them. And so I think it's possible that early in the investigation, someone high up did have a working theory, possibly even confirmation bias about who they thought did this. But then, as vehicles were seized and search warrants were executed or consensual searches were conducted, the evidence didn't necessarily support maybe that first initial theory. And so things pivoted. And so I'm not thinking right now that the family is a prime suspect. I don't think they're eliminated, but I don't think anyone's eliminated. I think that's very careful wording so that they can protect themselves. But I really do think, based on the subject video, the DNA that apparently doesn't match anybody close to Nancy Guthrie, I think they're starting to see that this may very well not be someone in the family. And that initial reporting from that one journalist with her high level source may not be accurate.
She's a former prosecutor. I did mention some of her reporting on here, but I said we don't know. Like it's one person, you don't know. It's funny that Brian Enton said that because he's at the same. I don't know if he's like a real employee of theirs, but he does content with that same outlet,
Right.
News Nation. So it's interesting that he was kind of
Yeah, he
saying, "No,
said
I'm
it.
not
He
going with
has
that," even
his
though I'm with News Nation. I love it actually.
yeah, he's got his own Brian Enton Investigates YouTube program.
That's right.
And he said right on there, he's like, look, you guys, I'm transparent with you. I'm not hearing that. And so, I give him credit for that. And he has been really just phenomenal with his reporting out there. I mean, everybody's just raving about it. He's working around the clock. I think he's very measured in his reporting. And one of the things he's done that has been so interesting is interviewing a lot of the former members of the sheriff's department
I
who
saw
are
that interview.
not
Yeah,
fans of the sheriff
that's
and have
right.
been very vocal about his ego and how he's kind of a my way or the highway kind of guy. So I find that very, very interesting. But I do think Brian Enton does a phenomenal job.
I also like too that he was at the scene of one of the detentions, I believe, and he basically, I believe, just stayed at his car and backed off law enforcement and let them do their job. But he didn't leave, you know what I mean? So he still kind of he did his job, but he didn't get in the way, which I think is like that's what we need from professional journalists to be the eyes and ears, but don't cause any problems, you know, like it just I think he's done a good job as well.
I agree.
This is another question about potential suspects because they grabbed this one like pizza delivery guy one night and then they let him go that same
Mhm.
night. And then they apparently detained these other individuals just a couple nights ago, and then we all thought it was over both times. Karen says, "Do you think they still have their eyes on the guys they detained on Friday?" That was Friday night, the last time they detained people.
Yes, I do. I think they're still looking heavily at them. I think they're waiting for some evidence to come back from the lab, from processing. But what I'm reading, based on these past two SWAT operations with the coordinating search warrants that were executed, it seems to me that they're really focusing in on people who were in the neighborhoods either for deliveries or their vehicles were spotted on video or their cell phones are pinging. They are really focusing on people that are in that proximity.
The
And so it
dragnet.
makes me wonder, you know, could Nancy Guthrie, could she really be the person that helps us solve this? Does she have some sort of calendar or day planner where she wrote down, you know, I'm having an exterminator coming today, or I'm having the pool deck sealed today, or I'm having my air vents cleaned today? Can they look into who came to her home, who delivered Amazon packages to her? Did she have a regular pizza guy that came, you know, on Friday nights or during football games? Who delivered to her? Did she order DoorDash? Who was her Uber driver? Did she have various Uber drivers, or did she always use the same one? I think they're really going to look at that, because I do think this may be someone who she may have recognized. She may not have known them well, may have only encountered them once, maybe twice. But I do think you have to ask, why would they take her body? Why would they take her? Why not just attack her in her home and leave her? Well, that tells me they're afraid of two things. One, she's got their DNA on her body, and so they want to get rid of her body so that that can't be discovered. And maybe she scratched a person who entered her home and she got DNA under her fingernails. So that's the first thing. But the second thing I think is, was it somebody she could name, someone she could recognize? Even if she doesn't remember their name specifically, she would say, oh, it's the guy who
Food guy.
always
Yeah.
delivers, you know,
Yeah.
my sandwiches from the local deli or whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. Could be any it's I didn't even think of that, like about that they were that's how maybe the delivery guy got nabbed up in this is that he was in the area or they could have done like a like you said a ping on the phones, like whatever they
Yeah,
call that,
well,
a
and I would,
geofence.
if it were me, I would be going through her bank accounts tooth and nail. I want to look at every place she spent money. Where did she order her pizzas? When she had her Mahjong group over, did she order any sort of food from a caterer or any sort of food supplier? I want to look, what did she order on Amazon? When was she expecting deliveries? I want to look, did she have any sort of online romances? Was she online dating? Did she have any companionship? Who's doing her accounting? Was anybody skimming money out of her accounts? And was she about to report that? I want to look at all those kinds of things. I think Nancy Guthrie could have a lot of clues in her financial records, in her day planners, calendars, things of that nature, even text messages, email communications. The elderly tend to be very heavily focused on schedules and logistics. If you ever go to the Dunkin' Donuts in the morning and get your coffee and you see the groups of elderly people who are there chit-chatting, what do they talk about? They talk about their medical appointments, they talk about things they got to fix at their house, and they talk about their schedules, where they got to go and when they got to be there. They're very focused on times, locations, and what needs to get done and how they're going to get it done. And I think they jot that stuff down. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's some sort of record.
That Makes sense, all of it. You're giving us so many nuggets on this that I didn't even think about. It's very interesting to hear
And
some of
another
these
thing I'd
thoughts.
say, Mike, another thing too, with the elderly, especially when they've had friends for 40, 50 years, friends they've had since childhood. When those friends start to pass away, a lot of times they will take on a surrogacy mother role or grandmother role to their friends' children and grandchildren, kind of out of loyalty to their friend who has passed on. Like, I'll keep an eye on your daughter or son, or I'll help them out. I'll make sure if they ever need anything, I'm there for them. And I'm wondering, is there anybody that had their hands out, came to Nancy wanting a loan, that she helped out, and then it got to be routine and they kept putting pressure on her? And was there anyone she cut off recently? I'd be very curious about that. I want to talk to all the people who played mahjong with her. I want to talk to anybody she was in a book club with. I want to talk to anybody that she socialized with routinely, because that's where you're going to find out what was going on in Nancy's life that was bugging her, that she doesn't want to talk about with her kids. A lot of times you confess things to your friends that you don't want to raise with your family. I want to know, what do her friends know? Was there someone at church bugging her? Was there a staff member she had that she wasn't happy with and was planning to fire? Was there a neighbor she was in conflict with? Was there something she was worried about in her home? Even though she has a daughter who's the Today Show co-host, she still has normal everyday things that happen to her, just like the rest of us do. Her toilet flapper isn't going to work someday, and she's going to have to call a plumber. Who's been to her house recently? Those are all things we got to look at.
That her hair salon. Maybe
Yeah,
they didn't
that's
cut her hair
another thing.
correctly. You never know. You never know. Um, we got a lot of questions. I see some people upset we haven't asked their questions yet. We're trying. We're trying to get this people have a lot of questions about this. This
That's
is
good. That's good.
yeah,
The
yeah.
thing is that everybody can relate to this because we all have someone in our life, whether it's a biological mother, an adoptive mother, a surrogate mother, or a mother figure or a grandmother figure. We all can relate as to how devastating this would be and how scary it is. Someone showing up on your doorstep in the middle of the night with a ski mask and a gun. So I think that's why this has really, really captured the nation's attention. How can you improve your personal safety? You want to feel safe in your own home, and you feel vulnerable when you learn you might not be safe in your own home.
Now there's a lot of this out there, and I just want to know, what do you think the odds are? Like, my husband is convinced that Savannah was working on a big story and her mother's abduction was a way to get her to shot. I just cannot wrap my head around any of this. And he says not she also says not Epstein related, but I usually hear the version of this question as Epstein related because she actually did apparently interview some of the
Mhm.
survivors of the Epstein ring. Do you think there's any chance of that being true, that someone's trying to get back at Savannah for her reporting, whether it's Epstein or something else?
Well, I do think they will certainly look at that. NBC has security for their talent. When I worked at the 2002 Olympics, part of my daily duties was to go to the hotel where the Today Show was filming. And it was Katie Couric and Matt Lauer at that time, but they did have their security personnel. And certainly, law enforcement will liaison with Savannah's team, find out what kind of threats was she receiving, especially with all the focus recently on the Epstein files and what has come out and the controversy surrounding it. They'll look at that. I also think back in November, Savannah did a special piece on the Today Show. It was like a going home kind of segment where she
Right.
showed everybody where she was from. And I have to wonder if NBC and Savannah aren't worried about, did that give someone information about where her mother lived and that she was out there alone? I mean, you kind of got to wonder. She is a public figure. There are people that are very, very divided as to where they will get their news based on their political affiliations. Could there be someone that doesn't like her because she works for NBC or on a story she was reporting on? All that needs to be looked at to see is or was that a motivation?
Or just a stalker. There's a lot of stalkers out there, crazy people who get jealous sometimes.
Mhm.
And it's somebody else on the show. I think it might have been Nan. We had a guest recently that said the same thing, that like NBC almost like, because they share so much about these morning hosts on the, it's being a morning show host is a lot different than some of the other hosts, and it's very family oriented. They
Mhm.
like Kathy Lee used to bring up her kids and all that stuff, and
Mhm.
Kelly, so you see a lot of these shows be like that. Do you think that is like on NBC if something like that happened? Like, is that something they even consider when they're filming these things?
Well, I used to be a morning TV news anchor for
You
5
were?
years before I went into the FBI. And I had, some incidents where I had to call the police. It was back in the day when you'd get the hang up phone calls and the letters written in and that sort of thing. So it does happen. There's been news anchors that have been kidnapped and never been found, like Jodie Husentrut. We've had news reporters shot live on TV. That happened
Right.
not a couple of years ago, I believe. So there's been some attacks on the news media. And certainly when you are that high profile and you come into people's home every day, people feel like they know you. And you may, respond once, but then some people, they think of you as their friend and they want more attention and more attention, and then they become a pest. And typically what you do is you just kind of back off and you don't respond and you don't respond. Well, that not responding could
Drives
trigger
us crazy.
someone.
Yeah. Then they get even more upset.
Right.
We have a lot of questions about this backpack because it was so full.
Hmm.
This question from Jamie is just straight up, what could have been in it? What do you think about the backpack? Does like it being packed, does that stand out to you?
A little bit, yes. Well, first of all, they've traced that backpack back to Walmart. Now, what they're going to do, the FBI is going to look specifically at what versions of that backpack, that model in particular, have been sold in Tucson stores, or to a purchaser in the Tucson area. They're going to look at all those records, and then they're going to see if that purchase was actually made at a local store. Does that store still have video so that they can get an image of the person who bought that particular pack? I've worked with Walmart in the past to obtain video surveillance footage, and they've been phenomenal. They also are very good at producing purchase records and distribution records. So working with Walmart, they're wonderful. So that's positive. As to what's in that backpack, I think there's a couple possibilities. Number one, I think the working theory to me right now is I think they think this person is someone who has a day job, but then at night may moonlight as a burglar and may be part either of a burglary ring or just a serial burglar. So it's possible that this person came from another location and already had some loot in their backpack, or it's possible that that backpack was filled with supplies, possibly restraints, possibly a tarp, possibly certain kinds of tools in order to get
Maybe
into a
something to break into a
safe.
safe? I was gonna
Yeah.
think about that. Like what kind of tools to break into a safe, I wonder, right?
Yeah, something to cut that lock. Yeah.
Huh. That's
Drill into the lock.
I wonder how quickly the FBI went to that Walmart, if there's a local Walmart near there. Is
Well,
that like
what
what?
they'll do is they'll get the spreadsheet database of all the purchases of that particular backpack, and then they'll look, all right, we'll start close in, working concentric circles, and then work out. So they'll look at, all right, how many were purchased closest to Nancy Guthrie's location, and then let's see what we can identify there, and then see, all right, do we have any of these names already in our system? Are they someone who's already on our radar, either through their cell phone or through their vehicle or through another tip we've received? And then they'll work it from there.
Oh, that's interesting. It could just be a burglar, like you said, or
Yeah.
a ring of burglars. It could
Right.
be.
There could be people who are delivery people during the day and they deliver and they know who are the elderly and who's vulnerable and who lives alone.
Who lives alone? That's a
And
big
then at
one.
night, they go out and they hit those houses.
Wow, that's wild. I mean, you know that I walk dogs. I walk dog for a 99-year-old woman that lives alone, and I just
Yeah.
think about that. Maybe it's a dog walker. Like, I mean, jeez,
Yeah. I mean, quite
Christ.
frankly, yeah, it could be anybody in these neighborhoods.
Mm. It's horrible to think like that, that this type of thing could happen. But I mean, something happened. Somebody came to her house with bad intent. We saw the video. Like, that's as clear as
Right, with
day.
the ski mask. I mean, even though this subject was unorganized as far as not having something to cover up that doorbell camera with, like duct tape or any sort of blackout paint or something like that. The fact that they turned around and grabbed some foliage and vegetation and then tried to hold it up to block the lens, even though that was unorganized, they still premeditated. I mean, they came double gloved, they came with
Totally.
a gun, they came with a ski mask, they had their head down as they approached at first. So there definitely was premeditation, and there's something in that backpack, like we said, and I think there's high potential that that had supplies in it that could be utilized in case they did need to cut into a safe, in case they needed a tarp for something, in case they needed a second backpack to carry out a lot of things. If there was jewelry or cash or things of monetary value, of high monetary value, electronics, things like that, computers.
Johnny Lulu has a common question that a lot of people have brought up. Jodene, will you address the crime scene being open? I've seen some investigators say it's common to release the scene when it has been processed. But there's also, the fact that like there was a pizza delivery there, and they blamed it on the media, and it really wasn't the media; it was the audience watching. Someone in the audience decided to send a pizza to one of their favorite YouTubers, apparently. But even after that, even after law enforcement said, "Please don't send any deliveries to the house," like the next day or 2 days later, this guy JLR is recording an Amazon delivery happened. An Amazon
Right.
delivery actually happened to the house.
Mhm.
Is that a problem for law enforcement or not? Are we
It is.
over?
It is. It was, released and then they're back, and then released and they're back. Just secure the thing, keep somebody there. This is high profile. You've got media all the way up and down the street. Just secure it. Just secure it. You've got a high profile celebrity whose mother is missing. It's just better to secure it, and then you wouldn't have these issues.
Totally. That's what I'm thinking. Like even just one or two cops or just a cop car. You put a
Yeah.
cop car right in front of the driveway, no one's going in, like, or they'll ask the cop, "Hey, can I go in here?" And they'll tell you no, and that's it. Um, There's another question that came in, and I have no idea on this one. Shannon says, "Do we know if Nancy had any firearms? Do you happen to know that?"
I do not, but that is one thing I mentioned when I was on Justice Serve TV the other day is we don't know. She could have been proficient with a gun. She may have had a weapon for self-protection, and perhaps, she brandished it and tried to scare him away. We don't know, and perhaps that caused her to sustain an injury. We don't know what really went down in that house. We also don't know if there's interior cameras. There's been some talk about that. And if there is,
Right.
what do they see? We know she didn't have a subscription, but I do suspect they have more video that they haven't released. And so what would that tell us if she did have interior cameras? Can we hear anything? Is there audio on the video that they were able to recover? Can we hear anything? Can we hear multiple voices on that? Also, what do we see in the house? What did it look like? Was there a lot more blood? Not that much blood? Were there things overturned, lamps broken, signs of a struggle in the bedroom? You know, how extensive was the struggle in the house? I'd be curious what kind of evidence they found in there.
That would be interesting if there were more video. What
Mhm.
if there were more video, why would they release it? Is there any reason they wouldn't release it like the a
Yeah,
video
they're
that
going to
they did?
hold back. They're going to hold back more. I think they released the very crucial part to try to generate leads, the part with the best facial characteristics, the images where you can see the full body, you can see the footwear, the pants, the backpack, the jacket, the ski mask, you can see the gait of the person, because there are some people that can recognize people just based on the way they walk. So I do think they pick the best images they have, but I do think they may have more. And certainly, I think there's the possibility of audio as well.
That would be wild to find out, to see that, especially if they make arrest and we get to hear it later in court or something like that, you know?
Mhm.
This is a question that came in. Can the FBI just take over the case from Pima County, or do they have to work with Pima County?
So right now, there's two ways the FBI can get involved. One is per request of the local department, which is how the FBI was brought in. Pima County requested their assistance. The other way the FBI can be part of the investigation is if she's kidnapped and taken across state lines. Then the federal kidnapping statute kicks in, and then they would have jurisdiction that way.
A lot of people bringing that one up tonight. People, I think people, it's funny because some people seem to want the FBI to take over, but there's also been some criticism of the FBI, which you used to work for.
Mhm.
Here's a comment. What about Kash Patel and all the firings at FBI and DOJ? There kind of has been a purge, and a lot of people who have also retired. Is the FBI what it was before? And are there issues with the FBI, and what are they, if there
There's
are?
a lot of issues with the FBI under Kash Patel. You know, when he first was appointed and coming in, you know, he was going to clear house and he fired a lot of people. And there's a lot of lawsuits because those firings were, you know, many people feel unjustified. He's very controversial across party lines within the FBI. You know, every FBI director I worked for was a Republican, and they all had their strengths. They all had a few weaknesses, but I would have worked for any of them again. Louis Freeh, Robert Mueller, James Comey, Christopher Wray, and then in between Comey and Wray was Andrew McCabe for a little bit. But they were all Republican, and you know they all knew the law really well. The problem with Kash Patel is a lot of people don't feel he's got the legal knowledge necessary. They don't like the way he inserts himself into investigations. He's fired a lot of very, very experienced FBI agents who investigated January 6th. We're just doing their job. A lot of people are very concerned about that. They don't like his use of the plane. They don't like that he tweeted out inaccurate information after the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Didn't
You
he?
know, Dan Bongino, the former deputy director, had to go out and make the
Look at
media
that.
rounds and kind of clean up that mess. And so there's a lot of controversy over Kash Patel. A lot of people don't like the way he testified, felt he was very undignified in the way he addressed Congress. So he's not popular, and that's across, you know, it's not just one side of the political aisle that feels that way. There's a lot of people that don't feel he's up for the job as FBI director. And, you know, I'm no longer in the FBI. Certainly, I think, you know, the tweet after Charlie Kirk, I just, you know, that didn't look good. That hurts the agents on the ground. And really, that's who I care about because they're the ones working the cases for the public to keep the public safe. And when the director does that, then the public loses faith in the organization as a whole, and that affects the credibility of all the hardworking women and men in the FBI.
Usually when people think it's about politics and things like that, and especially such a high profile where the nation's on edge after that Charlie Kirk thing. A lot
Well,
of people
and
lost
there's
their shit
people
about that.
from one of the things with Charlie Kirk was he tried to have conversations with people. So he didn't just have people that were conservative in nature. There were other people who would like to come out and talk to him. So no matter if you're apolitical, liberal, conservative, whatever, when there's someone shooting at him, that's a danger to everybody in that public, regardless of what their political affiliation is.
100%.
And so not only do we have an innocent person who's been murdered in front of this crowd of people, but all those people in the crowd were endangered. And then here you are, the top law enforcement official of the greatest law enforcement agency in the world, and you tweet out inaccurate information. I mean, that's just not good. It's just not.
Not good at all. It's hopefully he does better. It looked like Trump might get rid of him, but he's held on, so we'll see what happens there. There's also a comment here. There's a YouTuber, Josh Ritter. I think he's another guy who's pretty highly respected. Josh Ritter found out from law enforcement that the elderly abduction is not uncommon in Pima County, but no one has actually discussed these cases publicly. We also had another comment like that, or question from Victory. She said, how common is it to take the victim out of the home? Like, are these abductions even that common? What do you think about that? Is this an area that gets targeted more for home abductions, and so it raises the red flag? What do you think?
So I do know who Josh is, but I've never met him, but I have followed his show that he has, and he's very knowledgeable. I can't speak to his reporting on whether there have been abductions and they're just not being reported there. But I will say, in my experience, generally, no, there aren't a lot of adult kidnappings. Typically, if you do see any sort of adult kidnapping, it's someone who's maybe 18, 19 years of age, and it's part of some sort of sex trafficking or human trafficking.
Like domestic type thing.
Yeah,
or,
right.
Or
Usually
you grab the
kidnappings
kids type thing. Yeah.
The kidnappings I've worked have all been juveniles.
Yeah. That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Kids get kidnapped, or like a jealous boyfriend, or a boyfriend that got dumped, maybe.
Or custodial kidnappings where one parent takes the kids away from another parent.
That's probably the most frequent. I mean, that's what you see in the news a lot is, one parent lost custody and they grab them, or they say, oh, the other one's harming the kids. But this is totally not like that. So this is not common. Yeah, I don't think it's likely. I think it might be what you said. That makes sense, where a burglar goes in and she knows who they are. She finds out and they're freaking out. They don't want to go to jail. So that could definitely be a likely, could be.
Yeah.
The question came out here. I thought Annie and her husband took her out to dinner and dropped her back at the house. Is that not true? Question for the chat, if anyone knows. What do you think? Because I thought there was an Uber, but I think she took the Uber to their house, and then
so she took
went
the
to dinner.
Uber to their house for dinner, and then they played some games after dinner at the home. And then there's been conflicting reporting from the sheriff. Originally, he said the son-in-law, Tommaso, brought her home. Then at the press conference a few days later, he corrected that and said family brought her home. We know from the timeline that law enforcement released that the garage door went up at 9:48, and then the garage door went down at 9:50. Now, a lot of people said, well, could she get out of the car and walk in, and could the door close within 2 minutes? Is that too quick for someone with her mobility issues? I'm not sure. But what we do know is by 1:47, we have that Ring doorbell, the doorbell system, the Nest camera on the doorbell. That becomes disconnected. We have the video of the subject on the doorstep. And by 228, her pacemaker is no longer connecting to her Apple devices.
It's pretty definitive time.
Well, and that's another thing, Mike, that is so unusual. You're talking about at minimum 41 minutes of activity here. That's an awful long time to be on the premises. What's going on? Usually criminals, they're in and out. They don't want to linger and hang around. So how long were they in, or he or they? I'm not really sure how many perpetrators we're talking about here. We know at least one. How long was that person or persons on premises? How long did it take them to make entry? Was there forced entry? We don't know. That's something they won't confirm or deny if there was forced entry. Once they're in the house, how long were they in the house before either they encountered Nancy or Nancy encountered them? How long did a struggle ensue? How long did it take to get Nancy out of the home? It's very difficult for one person to move a 150-pound woman. It is. Even though she had mobility issues and she was elderly, it's still very difficult.
I think Shannon notes that you're a great guest and that
Oh,
we're
thank
definitely
you.
learning new things. I think we are learning new things. We're looking
Thank you.
all kinds of information coming out today, which is awesome. This is exactly what we wanted. And I love how the audience is throwing like great questions. They're just
Oh, they're
they just wanna-
fantastic questions.
Some of them I can't get to. There's been so many questions tonight. There's so much interest in this one. It reminds me a little of Karen Reed, like in the old days where can't keep up with the chat questions. There's
Oh,
just too
I
many of
know.
them.
Karen Reed. Boy, we covered that, didn't we, Mike?
Yeah, we did. We're gonna talk a little bit about that tonight too, if we have time.
Yeah, no problem.
We got a few more questions on this that I want to hit to, make sure we try to get these in because a couple more good ones came in. Here's one. Do you think her body could have been found, but they haven't disclosed it to the public?
No, I don't think so. No. I think when they discover a body, they'll do proper identification, they'll notify the family, and then they will release that information.
Definitely. There's another one. Mike O'Neill says, can the FBI become more deeply involved due to ransom notes, possibly interstate transmission of monetary funds? And I'll also add into that, we've had a lot of questions about the ransom notes. How likely do you think that any of these are real? Or do you think it's just
I thought that was a complete distraction. It was really making me mad, quite honestly. And my read of the sheriff was kind of like, yes, we asked for the FBI to assist us, but I kind of read it like, but we only want you to work the ransom part of this, work that technology part, FBI. But, the actual break-in, I got that. That's kind of how I read that. And I may be completely wrong. But given the lack of collaboration, or at least the lack of consistent messaging between the FBI and the sheriff on the actual break-in part of the case, I think that's where the sheriff kind of kept things to himself. He sent things to his lab rather to the FBI lab. And so I think there was a disconnect there. Now, as far as the ransom letters that came in and the demands, and then the subsequent demand that came in to TMZ saying, I'll tell you who was writing those letters and who the kidnapper is. If you give me 100,000, I don't want to go to law enforcement and tell them because I don't trust them. Regarding all of that, I think the FBI is going to be looking into all of that. They will work that as an interstate possible violation of making a false ransom demand and basically causing pain to the family through harassment during, a troubling time, those sorts of things. I think we don't have any proof of life. We don't have anything at this time that's been released or told to us to give any sort of legitimacy that the people or people doing those demands and writing those letters that went to the media are really one and the same with the person or persons that have Nancy Guthrie.
I think you're right on that. I don't think I think it's all. There's so
And
many scammers
it
out
really
there.
made me mad because it was so much the focus
Yeah,
of the
got so much
media, because the
headlines.
media kept getting those letters,
Yep.
that I just felt that the media really missed an opportunity to really really educate the public about, hey, these kind of people show up and they're snooping around your cars and snooping around properties in the middle of the night all over this country. How can you keep yourself safe? If you have a sliding glass patio door, do you have the pin that goes in at the top? Do you have a bar in the tracking? Do you have camera systems? Do you have birdie alarms? Do you have pepper spray? Do you have pepper gel? There's all sorts of things the media could have been educating the public on as to how to stay safe. If you have an elderly family member, who's monitoring their finances to make sure, the crazy cousin or the crazy nephew isn't extorting your grandparent for their retirement funds? All those sorts of things are really, they're not just limited to somebody who's got a daughter that co-anchors the Today Show. There are a lot of families that have people who defraud the elderly and defraud their parents, or try to get their elderly parents to change their signatories on their bank accounts, or to change their wills, right, when they get into their 80s. And you really see, that's when you start to see a lot of discord in families starts to emerge because one sibling isn't happy or one sibling wants all the control. And you really, really got to watch out for that. You really, really do. And it's more common than you realize.
I was just gonna say it is common because, like, I'm a dog walker, and you know how many, especially women, elderly women, living alone because and their kids are far away. They still check in, but not enough. People live further apart today than in the past. It's just, and we have an aging population in my town. There's a lot of older folks that can't, like, they're not going to sell their home, so they end up living alone. They live in mansions. Single, usually it's an older woman in a mansion by herself. It happens a lot. So I
Yep.
think these are very common issues among families. So that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
The media needs to focus more on that. I agree 100%. Got
Yeah.
another question here. Can't they use the new Ring camera capability shown at the Super Bowl during a Super Bowl ad during the times they have to find the vehicle? I'm not sure what that question really means. I don't know if you do.
I didn't see the ring.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
what
I
that
missed that
relates to.
commercial.
I didn't see the
I didn't watch
commercial.
the commercials this year. I kind of like tuned them out because now you got a cell phone. You're like, as soon as the commercial comes on, I'm looking at the cell phone. Um, I think we've gotten most of the. I'm sure there's new ones that came in, but I've tried to kind of block off a lot of good questions that came in tonight. Um, oh, here's one last one. Kathy says, What do you think, if anything, the FBI is withholding? What could they be withholding?
Oh, I think
You
a
mentioned
lot.
video. Yeah,
I think a
right.
lot based on my experience. We never told anybody anything. We keep our cards close to the vest. I think they know exactly what cell phones were in proximity to her location. I think they've gone to the various intersections and gotten license plate readers. They know plate numbers. I think they have canvassed that neighborhood multiple times. The neighbors have been extraordinarily cooperative, providing videos. I think they're looking at what deliveries took place on her street, what service providers worked on that street. I think they know a lot from Nancy's own computer and her day planners in her house and talking to her family. I think they know a lot about the staff that work for her. I think they're looking at her finances to see, was she lending anybody any money? Was there any sort of nefarious activities, somebody stealing from her? I think they're looking at all of that. And I think they know a lot about location of people, where people were and where they weren't that they're not sharing with us. And then they know more about the actual crime scene, what evidence they have, what's still being tested, what they're anticipating getting back, what they can compare to, the different purchase records at Walmart or different things that they've developed through the tip line. I think, the public is the bread and butter of law enforcement, and I think they have a lot more intelligence and a lot more information than we realize.
It's We get a question here that keeps coming up. Was there any jewelry or anything of value missing that you know of? I haven't heard
I
anything
have
about
not
that.
heard anything, but that doesn't mean there wasn't. All
That
right.
could be
That
something they're
doesn't mean they
withholding.
may be holding that back. And also, just to point this out, a lot of times people will take off their jewelry at the end of the day before they go to bed and they'll put it on their bedside table. They may have scooped that up and left the jewelry box over on the dresser alone. So it may look like, oh, they didn't take the jewelry, but yet there could be pieces she had been wearing that day that are missing. You know, you may know your parents or your grandparents' wedding ring, but you may not know all the other jewelry they have that could have value. You know, when I think about my kids, they don't know all the jewelry that I have that's has monetary value to it. They may know a few pieces, but they don't know all of it.
Someone mentioned Lifeline is a good service in addition to cameras. Lifeline is immediate response and can get law enforcement EMS on the way
Yeah.
quickly.
It's
That's
like a
something you look.
plunger that you can push. Mhm.
Yeah. I
And have
remember
Life
my Nana used to
360
have a button
or
in her, yeah, elderly
yeah,
housing. She could,
especially if you have an elderly person and they live alone, you want to put them on your Life 360 or you know, on your plan so you can track them if they have their phone with them. Now, it's my understanding they left her phone behind, so that wouldn't be helpful, but certainly that's just another added feature that can help your elderly relatives. And every elderly person, especially elderly women, should have a birdie alarm. They're about 20, 25 bucks. You can find, I have links for all these safety products I've talked about, the camera systems, the sliding glass door bars, all these things I've mentioned. You can go to my website, jodeneweber.com, and I have links for all these products, but get a birdie alarm. Even for elderly women when they're walking in a store parking lot, if they were to fall, they can pull the birdie alarm. It'll set off an alarm. It'll get them help. If they feel like someone's coming up to them to grab their purse, they can pull the alarm. I mean, you just pull it apart, you can put it right back together. And, you know, there's really no offense for sounding an alarm if you need help. So it's better to be safe than sorry.
besides Jodene Weber. Weber is with one B, WEBER.com. JodeneWeber.com. I'm going to check that out because I'm going to be replacing a window and there was a bar, but it seems like it's kind of rotted out. So I'm like, I need to get something good in there to make sure we're
Yeah.
protected here. So
Yeah, I have all sorts of devices. If you travel a lot and you're in hotel rooms, I've got special locks for hotel doors. I've got different equipment. If your car goes off a bridge into water, how to cut your seatbelt and how to break the glass so you can get out of your car if your vehicle becomes submerged. I have fire boxes. If you're in a fire, you know, they protect against high temperature fires, your documents and your valuables. So just different things to think about for your personal safety.
people are noting it. I need to up my security. And people are asking about the birdie system, but again, it's we have
The
a
birdie alarms.
yeah, birdie alarm.
Every college girl should have one. I think every woman should have a birdie alarm. I really do. And you should, if you have one by your bed, if you have one clipped to your bag, your backpack, I just really think it's a good idea.
And you can get this on her website. It's
Yep.
pinned to the chat tonight. It's also on the screen right now. JodeneWeber.com is where you can find out more information about all of that.
Mhm.
Someone said hotel security is not oh, that's Sarah again. Hotel security is not discussed enough. I travel quite a bit for work, had to get up to speed quickly. That is a big one, isn't it?
Oh, huge, huge. If you're a woman and you travel a lot for work, and certainly in my line of work, I did do quite a bit of traveling. You know, not all hotels have the system where you have to key card for the elevator to take you up to your floor. Some people can just walk right up or take the elevator up to your floor. And, you know, I just think it's always good to have an extra door lock on those hotels, those hotel doors to your rooms. I also
I had
have
a,
a thing on my website to scan for hidden cameras if you're renting an Airbnb,
good one.
you know, any sort of thing like that. Hidden cameras have been a problem in hotels. So just, you know, something to think about.
Um, I'm trying to think, did we have any? I thought there was another question here, but I think I got them all. I think we've basically covered everything on this. Is there anything else that you think we should bring up tonight that we haven't brought up as related to, Nancy Guthrie at least?
Well, you know, just I know it's dire. I know we're going into our third week, but I just, you know, I would like everyone to just, you know, hold out hope. I know it doesn't look good, but hold out hope. I mean, this is just terrifying. And, you know, just, you know, what did this lady ever do to anybody? You know, what did she ever do?
I
Just
know
terrible.
it is terrible, and I feel bad for the family
Mhm.
and anyone that knew her, because I'd be freaking if she was my customer, if I was walking her dogs,
Yeah.
like I walk some of the customer dogs, I'd be freaking out. I'd be so upset. I mean, I can't imagine, you know. Um,
Yeah. It's terrible.
we also want to talk about Karen Reed because that's always a big topic for you and I. We both
Yeah.
covered that. That's how we kind of met.
That's how
What
we
do you
met,
think?
Mike.
Yeah, that's how we met. So it's always going to be big for us. There's things happening in the criminal side. A judge basically said no, you can't get into her phones. Now she's looking to get her phones back because they're still trying to indict her on witness intimidation. What do you think about all of that? The fact that she was found not guilty of the major charges, and then they come back and they're still trying to mess with her all these months later. They still have her phones. The judge turned down the subpoena of the phones just this last week, but the prosecutor's still holding on to her phones, and she still has to pay a criminal defense attorney to go into court this Thursday, apparently, and ask for her phones back. What do you think about all of that?
Oh, I think that's just egregious. They've already gone to a grand jury. The grand jury would refuse to issue a true bill. So now it's like they're trying to take a second bite of the apple. I think it's harassment, is what I think. I think she's been acquitted. I think the Norfolk DA's office has a lot bigger problems that they need to deal with. And a lot of it has to do with the Massachusetts State Police troopers that worked with their prosecutors. I think that's where they need to focus. I think they need to focus on turning over discovery in a multitude of cases that are ongoing up there. I've never seen so many prosecutions have discovery not turned over for years. I mean, Miles King, we saw it in Brian Walsh, we saw it in Karen Reed, we're seeing it across the board. And, you know, that's a systemic problem within that DA's office. And it's not going to change until Morrissey's gone.
He'll be gone because he's not running for re-election, but one of his
Yeah,
surrogates
not soon
is.
enough.
Yeah, one of
Not
his
soon
surrogates
enough.
just jumped in the race, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully, it's one of the outsiders. But it's wild because you mentioned Miles King. Miles King, they released him on $50,000 bail for murder one. He hasn't been convicted yet, but that is very unusual because of just what you said.
Because of the
Because they didn't
discovery.
disclose the evidence. It's just like that's
Yeah.
how bad it is.
And regarding Karen's phones, look at what they did with Brian Walsh. They
Yeah,
gave Brian Walsh his phone back a day later, and then they went out and got a search warrant to re-seize that phone.
yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I got a question going back to Guthrie from Facebook. I think she's just posted a comment. She was going to subscribe because we weren't answering her questions, but you got to keep posting the question because I keep seeing the complaints and not the question. But I do have one good question from her. Her name is Brenda. She says, "Do you think she is in Mexico?" Savannah Guthrie. What do you think about that angle? Because
I
that
think that
comes up.
is an angle that they need to explore. Absolutely. I think they need to explore that possibility. If
Totally
and
possible.
maybe they are. I mean, they've got thousands of leads that have come in. But certainly if anybody's in Mexico and they see something, they need to call in, call 1-800-FBI. So you know, I think if there is leads that take them in that direction, they will be followed through. But certainly I think given the proximity to the Mexican border, that's not something that they can just thumb their noses at and not look at it and not consider.
Excellent. I would say, Brenda, don't leave. Just keep posting your questions because sometimes I got to say about Facebook, they don't always come through StreamYard. We don't always see the I don't know why. I've noticed that before. So I may have, because I was looking for your questions. I saw some of you were getting upset. I was trying to find them and I couldn't find them. So that was the first question I did see from you. So hopefully you're good. I want to talk a little more about Karen Reed because this civil case going on. This
Yeah.
judge seemed like he was a little frustrated because the depositions weren't happening soon enough.
Mhm.
Um, Michael Proctor lost his phone, to say
Yeah.
the
Well,
least. What do you want to
lost
say
his
about this?
phone.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. What do you?
Right. Right.
Is there anything you want to say about the civil case?
Well,
Have you been following
again,
it back?
speaking of discovery, I mean, the fact that Karen has to file these motions to compel, that just, oh, it just incenses me. It incenses me that this keeps going on. And then she's billed for all her attorneys to show up for these hearings and they keep kicking the can. And so then she's got to pay for another hearing and, file all the paperwork for these motions to compel. And yeah, let's get going on these depositions. Let's get going.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully the thing I'm wondering is if they're going to actually let us
Oh,
stream them all. The judge said maybe not. He was like
maybe,
hedging.
maybe not. I don't
What do you
know.
think?
I hope so. I mean,
Yeah,
don't we all want to see those depositions?
right.
Oh, that's must see TV. That'd be really good. And the Commonwealth witnesses, the Alberts, the McCabe's, and Higgins, I'm still shocked that they have the same legal counsel. I just don't see how that's going to work for them because there are things that Jen McCabe says or has said or testified to that hurt Brian Higgins and vice versa. So how can they be represented by the same attorney?
That's a good question. It doesn't seem too beneficial to them to,
No, not at all.
yeah.
Not at all. And Higgins, I'm sorry, but that family, they're going to back the family. If they're going to flip on anybody, they're going to flip on him. How does that
Right,
benefit
because he's worth
him?
it. Yeah, exactly.
And vice versa. When you look at the Alberts and the McCabe's, they've got children. So they've got, their interest. What if Higgins decides I'm going to flip on all of you guys?
You never know.
I just don't think, I think it's very highly unusual to me to see all those defendants with the same attorney. I
Yeah,
just don't understand how that's not a conflict.
doesn't seem smart. Another question came in. I keep going back to Guthrie now because, well, actually, this is about security cameras. It looks like you've got some people into security devices. I'm looking into security devices for myself. This is Linda. I'm almost 68, but I use a walker, and my family lives out of town. Thankfully, this discussion came up tonight. I hope this birdie can be bought in Canada too.
Oh, yes. Birdie alarms are everywhere. You can go, yes, absolutely. And the link on my website will take you to Amazon, but there's Amazon in Canada too. You can get a birdie alarm there. And then camera systems, I personally like Blink cameras. That's what I use. And I have exterior and interior cameras, and my interior ones point at any entrance or exit in my home. Any way to egress the home is where your cameras need to point at. And I like it. I find it highly beneficial.
Blink gives you I know about Blink cameras. They actually don't charge I think they charge you if you store extra, but they give you a certain amount for free, don't they? In
They
the cloud.
really do. It's like $10 a month. And the nice thing is I can link it to my phone. So let's say I go to the grocery store and somebody breaks into my home, which, by the way, everybody, most home intrusions happen Monday
While
through
you're out.
Friday during the day.
Yep.
Okay. So, or during Sunday, during church time. So having this kind of system is very beneficial because you can look on your phone, you'll get an alert. Oh, there's motion in my house. And you can look right at your phone and see if somebody has walked in, if you have these interior cameras. So, and then you don't go home. You just call 911 and say, hey, my alarm went off. I've got it on my phone. There's an intruder in my home. Please respond to blah, blah, blah. And then it's backed up to the cloud.
Perfect. There you go. It looks like we inspired some people to take security measures. Thank God.
We have to, everybody. You have to. And if you're in a situation where you have to park your vehicle outside, you must lock your vehicle. Don't leave money in your car. Don't leave chargers in your car. Don't leave any sort of valuables in your car. If they can look in your car and not see anything, they're not going to break into it. Okay. And if you do park outside, keep it locked.
Let me ask you that question, because I'm somebody that usually locks their car, but sometimes I don't. And I live in a place that's not like, you know, there's no crime up here, but still. But I had an incident with when I was a kid with my family. We're on Cape Cod, you know, some nice cottages, and, you know, so we had several different groups of friends and family that would stay at these places.
Yep.
And one night someone came in and broke into all the cars.
Yep.
And my family, the car was unlocked, and so all they did is they got some spare change. They stole some spare change. No broken window. But the other family member had their car locked, and their window got smashed in. So my other family was like, we should just leave our cars unlocked, because if there's nothing really in there of value besides like some quarters for tolls, what are you worried about? Like, what do you think on that?
You know, some people just, they'll break in for $5, you know, even if it's just a bunch of quarters. But other people are looking for electronics. You know, it used to be we'd have GPS systems that weren't part of the computer system of the car. So people would break in for that. A lot of people store binoculars. Some people store a lot of sporting equipment in their cars. You've got expensive baseball bats, things they can pawn or sell. Some people take off their jewelry and leave it in their car. Other people have different kinds of fishing rods or sporting equipment, even nice boots, things of that nature. Sometimes people leave different kinds of raincoats, that sort of thing in the back. All that stuff people will pawn and sell. They'll put it on Facebook Marketplace, or they'll go to a pawn shop or a secondary sports store and try to sell it for a few bucks. And they're walking around, and a lot of times, believe it or not, it happens in your nicer neighborhoods where you will have.
That's where they target. That's where they target.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's funny.
I did just see, Mike, that Savannah Guthrie apparently has made another
new video
appeal.
Do you want to take a look at the video?
Yeah, if you want to.
While I'm looking it up, I'll also tell a story about the one time I got my car broken into. And I used to do a show in Boston, downtown Boston. And, you know, it's kind of downtown crossing area. It's like a main business area, but there's also a lot of crime down there. And it was in the middle of the afternoon. I used to do a show from like 12 to 2 on the weekends. And one day I forgot, back when we used to have GPSs.
Yeah.
I forgot to hide the GPS. And it was like, I bought the thing used. It was probably only worth $50, but they broke the window and they stole that. They stole it, you know, so.
Well, and now they break in for your chargers. You know, a lot of us have a ton of chargers.
Oh, that's the only thing. I was thinking I have nothing of value in my car except maybe a couple quarters for the tolls. But I think that's the one thing. I do have the charger in the car. That's it. That's the thing that they would want. You're right. Mm-hmm. Things to consider. We do have our video. Hopefully, oh man, I got it. All right. Let me, we'll bring it up here. It's going to take me a second.
Okay.
Oh, this looks sad. This looks sad.
And
I'm going to replay it so we get it from
it's
the
been
beginning. All right, here we go.
I wanted to come on, and it's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and I just wanted to come on and say that we still have hope, and we still believe. And I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here. And we believe. And we believe in the essential goodness of every human being. And it's never too late.
That is,
Wow.
ooh, he's like
Just
really appealing to
devastating.
them. Yeah, that's. Do you think the FBI has given her advice on what to say in some of these videos? Because that seems like it. Or do you think she's just coming up, the family's just coming up with these on their own?
It could go either way. I think the ultimate choice is up to her, what she wants to do. Certainly, if she wants to consult with the FBI to get any sort of guidance as to what to say or not to say, they'll certainly advise based on experience. But ultimately, that's up to her. And I think there were some reports over the weekend about whether or not she's going to go back to the Today Show, and so I think putting out her own message, she takes back the narration, she takes back the narrative, and she gets the message out that she wants to be in the media right now, and that's to keep looking for her mom. And she's if somebody does have Nancy Guthrie and she's still alive, whether it's in Arizona, in Mexico, wherever, putting out a message like that, like we believe, even if you've done something wrong, there's still essential goodness in every person. You can still do the right thing, drop her off somewhere, take her somewhere, go to a church, drop her off at a medical clinic, drop her off at a library, anything like that. What does it hurt to say that? It doesn't hurt anything.
Smart. You could feel that's you can feel it. You can feel
Yeah,
like I
it's
was getting,
palpable.
yeah. It's uncomfortable to watch, especially knowing like when we watched her on TV, she's so different, She's so,
She just looks tortured to me. She
yeah.
just looks tortured, just emotionally exhausted, worried, and devastated. And how do you not have fear for your remaining family members, for your siblings, for your husband, for your children, for yourself?
Horrible.
Mhm.
Hopefully this ends soon for her because like you said, there's been discussion whether she's going to go back to television, morning television. I don't see how she could right now. That would be so difficult for her to be all happy and,
I
you
think she would
know,
have to take an extended leave of absence.
yeah,
Good or bad. I mean, even if they found her mother tonight, I
right.
still think she's going to
Couple
have
months. Yeah.
post-traumatic stress
Yep.
from just this entire ordeal. I just can't imagine the toll emotionally and physically and mentally this has taken on her and her family. And, she's still mom to two kids. She's got to try to, allay their fears and their concerns. And are we next? And, all those kinds of things. That's a very, very, it's just surreal. I mean, you just don't hear about 84-year-olds that are taken like this.
Can imagine. I mean, that's not the way you want the last days of your mom or your sister or your family member. It's just not.
Right.
Horrible. They're supposed to just be enjoying their last days of peace, just, chilling out.
Right. Right.
Um, this is a question about security. Jody, do you know anything about the Aura ring? It's a ring you can wear and it works like a fitness tracker. An elderly person can wear this and it's more inconspicuous than an Apple Watch.
Well, when we talked about the blue fly device that they're putting on the drones and the helicopters that's looking for either the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi signal, an Aura ring will connect to that. So if they had to use a device to find you, if you had the Aura ring on, it would connect because it transmits a signal. So I don't think it would hurt.
You know, this is a great comment from Sarah too, because what you've been talking about all night as like as possibly the way this turned out, you know, it could be a burglar and then they got exposed and they felt like they had to take Nancy away so they wouldn't get identified. And it seems to, it could like Sarah says, makes me wonder if something happened that spiraled this out of control. And now whoever took her is trying to figure out what to do with that message for Savannah. It almost seems like they think that possibly too.
Well, and I was saying the other day on another program I was on, law enforcement also, they need to liaison with their DNR officials, their park rangers, any sort of wildlife conservationists, all these people who are out at state parks, at campgrounds, people who are out hiking, out jogging. You need to look at cabins and cabin break-ins. You need to look for certain wildlife patterns. Do you see any sort of buzzards, any sort of vultures? Do you see any sort of outbuildings that are suddenly occupied that hadn't been occupied before? When I was working Eric Rudolph, the Centennial Olympic park bomber, when he was a fugitive, we had cabin break-ins. And what was unusual is that none of the electronics were taken from the cabins. We would find the medicine cabinets had been ransacked, where the ace bandages were missing and the hydrogen peroxide, and then spices would be missing or cans of soup. Those kinds of things. I think law enforcement needs to start looking at, do we have any cabin break-ins? Do we have any sort of outbuildings which suddenly seem occupied that nobody has occupied in a year or so? Those sorts of things. I think people need to look at campsites. She could be held in an RV, anything like that. I think those are things that we kind of got to think outside the box and consider.
Left us with a lot tonight to very much consider. I appreciate all your time tonight, Jody. This has been amazing. It's almost 2 hours at this point, and it was awesome. I think we hit so many questions and very informative tonight. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to bring up that you didn't get to bring up? Maybe even other true crime or anything you're covering? How can people follow you? JodeneWeber.com, obviously.
Yes. Well, my podcast is daily. It's called Caught in My Web. It's on patreon.com. My website is jodeneweber.com. I've got all the safety devices and links to those that I mentioned here tonight. And then my book is The Bold-Faced Deception. And you can find a QR code to purchase that on my website. Otherwise, it's available at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, and all your major book retailers.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much, Jodene, and hope you have a great week coming up. It is Sunday, so it's the first day of the week. I hope you have a great week upcoming here, and thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me again, and great to see you.
You too. That's Jodene Weber, retired FBI. She's also an author. She's also got broadcast experience. She's a podcaster, and it's a great guest. That was like freaking amazing. Buy her book. So if you want to really support her and support first responders tonight, buy her book. Go to her website, and maybe if you want to buy some of the items on her website as well to help your home security. JodeneWeber.com. It's pinned to the chat. I want to thank everybody who's been here tonight. We had a couple super chats. I want to thank Rose, who said, "Thank you, Mike and Jodene. This is great information." I thought this was phenomenal tonight. I think we got so much good information tonight. And I liked how she brought it back to home security. I think that's like a really kind of a good discussion, especially, my eyes have been opened too because of what I do and where I'm the trusted person going into people's houses, and especially elderly women, which are most of our client base. I got to be, Sometimes the guy's still kicking around, but it's often the husband is either, they've either divorced or more likely has passed away. And it's quite a bit of my client base for dog walking. And I just know that that's a big thing now, especially, I read the local papers, especially where I live. We have an aging population. A lot of them live alone. So you got to protect yourself. And I know a lot of our audience is that way as well. So we all need to protect ourselves. I'm already thinking about my own house. And I do have some security, but I think I got to up it. And I think I'm going to. And I really appreciate Jody. And it was awesome to talk about Karen Reed. We covered two great topics. We covered a little bit about Karen Reed, but we really got into the Savannah Guthrie, Nancy Guthrie situation, which is the biggest story in the nation. Everyone's interested in it. Everyone got to throw their questions out to someone that, used to work for the FBI, and she worked major. You heard it, Eric Rudolph. That's the one we talk about a lot too, where I think Richard Jewell was the one that was pointed at first, but it ended up being this guy that if it's the same one I'm thinking of, but it's just wild to have someone that we can discuss this, and we've been covering it for the last couple of weeks, and to have someone like Jody on the show, it's really an honor to have her on the show. Like I said, I love that ex-law enforcement come on the show a lot. It's great, and she's phenomenal. She is like one of the best guests. Yeah, thank you. I think it was a good interview tonight, and I know that people are going to check out her website, buy her book, Help the First Responders. I haven't actually bought the book. I've had her on a couple times. I need to buy that book, especially after hearing her story tonight. I feel like I got to, that's something, it's on my to-do list. Buy Jody's book. All right. I want to thank everyone for being here. Did I thank everyone on the super chats? I did. New member, Valerie, thank you so much. Betty also said she enjoyed reading Jodene's book. Hope she'll do more. You know what I like about that book too is I know it's something I could pass along to some family members. They love these kind of fiction. I looked over her book, and it looks like something I know some family members will definitely like to read. And we trade books back and forth a lot in my family, so that's another reason I need to buy her book. I think we mostly covered everything here. I'm just seeing if there's. Oh, Shannon says she loves me in a jacket. Thank you. I got dressed up, when I have retired FBI. It's Jodene. I can't be wearing the hat. I can't be wearing just the sweater or I had to put on the jacket tonight. Mia, one of our moderators, had this question earlier. We did get into that, I think, before you were here, Mia. So we did talk about that glove. That was answered as well tonight. I want to thank all of our moderators for being here tonight. And I'm sorry if I didn't get everybody's questions. I do have an eye issue as well. People need to know that. It's hard for me to stare at the screen. I have one good eye right now. Tuesday, I'm getting the cataract surgery. Hopefully, I'm going to be back to normal pretty soon. Keep your fingers crossed for me. I'm going to go give my boy Charlie some love right now, my little doggy. He's missing me. I'm back home tonight. I was dog sitting last night, so he's going to be extra happy I'm home. And I did eat those steaks, like I told you. I had that good meal. I finally ate them tonight. I missed them the couple nights we were up late, but I'm having a good weekend, and I'll probably be back a little bit tomorrow. We'll see. Monday might do a show. I don't know, maybe a live. But obviously Tuesday I'm not going to be doing anything live. I might still stream if I'm able to, the Karen Reed hearing, if I'm feeling good after the cataract thing. We'll see what happens at the Canton Select Board. We'll see. I want to thank everyone for being here. If you've first time here or you've been here before, please do subscribe. Hit the sub button. And make sure you hit all notifications. Noticing our numbers have been going up over the last couple of days. I really appreciate all the new subs here. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything else. Let me just check a couple other things here. See, look at me. I can't even, I can't have a hard time seeing. My glasses. I think we're good. I don't think we had any cash apps or Venmo, so I don't need to thank anyone. I think we're all caught up on that. I think I'm all caught up. Yeah, I'm not going to go live while I'm loopy on post-surgery meds. We saw somebody else do that recently. That will not be me. If I'm live, I mean, if I'm, streaming on Tuesday, it's just going to be streaming the Karen Reed hearing and not saying anything. I won't be on camera. Trust me on that. Subscribe, become a member, set an alert, come and chat and hang with us. Please do subscribe. And thank you for all your prayers too for my surgery. Hopefully it goes well. It better go well. I want to be able to have two good eyes again. Who are you calling a communist? You call me a communist? The guy who has all the stocks and does stock shows? I'm not a communist. I own a business. I own two businesses, actually. Tough to be a communist. Maybe he's talking about somebody else. I'm not a communist. I love small business, actually. That's, yeah, Miami Vice style. This is not going to be the long goodbye tonight. I got to go. I will catch up with you all later. But again, I want to thank Jodene Weber. I want to thank you for all the great questions. You had some great questions tonight. I'm glad I could take them, but the reason I did is because they were so good. Like, if I asked you a question, it was because it was a good one. And there were a lot of questions I didn't get to. I could tell there was interest tonight because of all the amount of questions. Yeah, please subscribe before you leave. Yeah, exactly, Sarah. They were fit. Give yourself a round of applause in the chat too, especially if you had a question that we put on the screen and asked. Because you guys, you ladies, you guys, you all did great tonight. We had a great community event tonight, and we got to talk to a retired FBI agent about one of the biggest stories in the country. And you did not let me down. I had some good questions already prepared, but you guys just added to it and gave more context. And I really appreciate our chat tonight. I'm very proud of you all. So thank you so much for being a part of it. So make sure you give a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe. And I'll talk to you soon. Have a great night. Peace out. Thank you to my mods. Thank you to Jodene Weber. And I'll see you soon. Love you all.